Hello, I'm Mary Gordon, and I'm happy to be here with you today at the International Youth Social Innovation Symposium. Swarthmore Social Innovation students, along with Ashoka Japan Youth Venture students, and here meeting to discuss the ideas of empathy and social innovation. I want to thank Dr. Denise Croissant from the Social Innovation Lab of Lang Center, Swarthmore College, for her invitation, and Nana Watanabe, who's Ashoka Japan director. Now, both of these women I have known for quite some time, so this is a collision of continents and of ideas and of opportunities and possibilities. So I am actually delighted to be kicking off with you here today. It would be useful to establish a shared understanding of what we mean when we say empathy. There are many ways you can cut, slice, and dice empathy, but for my purposes and from the research on roots of empathy, we find a very safe and general definition would be to take the two main components under which people usually think of empathy. First, there's cognitive empathy, and that is the best known definition, meaning your ability to take the perspective of another person. And that is the one most widely understood, I would say, in the world. And the second one, which is called affective empathy, refers to emotion or the ability to feel with another person. And that is the kind of empathy that really drives action, more so than just cognitive empathy. If you think about who are the people in the world who are responding to emergencies, who are the people who stop and help, who are the people who are the first responders, not just to the pandemic, but to any challenge, anybody who's in trouble. Well, they're typically people who have very high levels of affective empathy, and not so much the people who have high levels of cognitive empathy. Both kinds of empathy are really important. And the working definition I have of empathy includes both cognitive empathy and affective empathy. There is another aspect of empathy, somatic empathy, and that's the kind of empathy that you will sometimes see that people will actually physically mirror the feelings of the other, so that if you have a very close friend or family member who may be in tears of sorrow, if you have somatic empathy, you might find yourself crying with them. It's quite a beautiful thing when our feelings absolutely come from the inside to the outside. The working definition that we use in Roots of Empathy is that empathy is the ability to feel with another person. And that's where you get massive change. Today, in our conversation, it will be really important that we look at the relationship between empathy and social innovation, because empathy is a common denominator with social entrepreneurs, people who are striving for social change, people who have their pulse on injustice of some kind. And we now are in the presence of an amazing free fall in that the pandemic, which has been a universal experience, has created a crisis that has pulled people with high levels of empathy from all across the world to try and find a way to create a better world. So this call to empathy is being celebrated in many, many places, and it's quite typical that when there is a crisis, you will find a rallying of empathic people who are entrepreneurial, who have the ability to see a pattern and to see where they might be able to change it. And that is you folks. And that is probably the most hopeful thing that we have to work with. I'd like to share a minute and a bit of an amazing documentary by filmmaker Alex Gabay from the UK. His film is called Love, Hate, and Everything in Between. And he has brought together an eclectic group of psychiatrists, psychologists, historians, sociologists, all of whom have a particular take on what empathy is all about. And the film zeroes in on disasters. For example, the world's greatest example of the failure of empathy, which was the Holocaust, and the genocides, and our hatred, and our ability to heal and to have empathy for the aggressor. So this film is really a capturing of historic examples of where empathy has failed and where it has cured. This film opens with a sort of the man in the street speaking about their idea of empathy. And one of the last people to be interviewed says that empathy is seen as something that's weak, and that she thinks that's a problem with the world. And I would concur. I think our attitude to what empathy means and its gender association is unfortunate, but is changing. It used to be, when I was first speaking about empathy some 25 years ago, when I spoke in the United States, I was told after one of my presentations that empathy is a female discussion, no place in a mixed group. That if a man is empathic, it's tantamount to saying that he is effeminate and weak. So empathy was seen as an unattractive soft skill for men, and how that has changed. Here we are in an academic and quasi-business discussion, talking about the incredible role, the energy, and the motor that empathy has in driving social innovation. So here's a little bit of this documentary from Alex Gabay.
It's in a certain type of person, I think, to feel it. You either do or you don't.
I work with teenagers, and I think they struggle with that.
People express it in different ways.
It is an instinct. I can't really describe it. It's just this thing inside us that pops up every now and then.
Sometimes I think it's educated out of us.
Does religion have any impact on it, or is it just human nature?
In terms of power, it's seen as a weakness, but I think that's what's maybe wrong with the world today.
Empathy is the ability to be one with the feelings of another. Whereas sympathy to me is really feeling sorry for somebody.
It's a basic level of connectedness.
How do we ever know what someone else is thinking or feeling, since somebody else's mind is unobservable?
Well, neuroscience have been able to answer a very ancient, old and traditional question about empathy, whether empathy is an emotional or a cognitive process.
These are, without question, unprecedented times, but the pandemic, apart from really launching a period of incredible economic hardship and political confusion, and of course the climate around us is exacerbating that. But it also has unveiled deep disparity in society. It was always there, but one of the good things out of this crisis is that we universally have become aware of disparity in society. Enter social innovation. Here is where all of these points of intersection can address inequity and all kinds of injustices in society. So if you think about some of the other things that are going on in society at the same time, just this week, we witnessed the rover, the NASA spaceship landing on Mars, a remarkable achievement for humankind, the birth of hope, if you will. But contrast that with the expenses paid to find out if there was ancient life on Mars, and the expenses paid to make life more equitable and inclusive and just plain old-fashioned fair. So you enter into this world thinking about, well, what are all of the other things that are going on at the same time? And I call this taking a synthesizing approach, having a synthesizing mind so that you don't just focus on your particular area of concern, but you mix in what else is happening in other areas beyond health, beyond the economy, beyond the climate, what else is happening? So, what are some of these disparities that the pandemic has unveiled? Well, one of the things the UN has confirmed is that a shadow pandemic of domestic violence, huge. The other thing I can share with you from Canada's experience in our capital province, our capital city, Ottawa, there has been a 50% increase of violence and maltreatment against babies 1 year and under. So this is a stunning conclusion. But what it speaks to is that society's most influential institution and pervasive and universal institution, the family, is under huge duress. So it's not just economic stress, it's not just life chances stress. The relationships between the family members have been fractured, and where there was the potential of violence, it's become manifest. So, this idea of empathy being the undercurrent of fueling social innovation, empathy is also the absence of empathy, let me say, is the undercurrent of violence. And I think these are two things that we need to consider concurrently, because when affective empathy goes up, and that's the kind of empathy that affects change, you tend to have cognitive empathy going up. But when you look at empathy and violence, when empathy goes down, violence goes up. And when you look at the world and how we are doing in the world, I think we have seen an increase in empathy, in that people have become aware of the suffering of others, and that we have seen kindness happening. In fact, 1,000 wildflowers of kindness have bloomed that people recognize. And the difference is who is making these acts of kindness. It is the people who have high levels of empathy. Knowing that empathy is so crucial in the identification and success of social innovation and social entrepreneurs, I'm always asked, so where does empathy come from? And how can we get more of it in society? So I'll just share the short story of Roots of Empathy. I put together the Roots of Empathy program, which brings the attachment relationship to a whole classroom of children. And the idea that the children would be coached to observe the baby's feelings and develop affective empathy, develop their ABCs of the emotions they feel, and be able to recognize in themselves and in their classmates the baby's emotions, so that you were developing affective empathy in the classroom, and also to take the perspective of the baby. What is the baby trying to do? The children then develop cognitive empathy in many ways like that. Plus, you could not develop empathy through traditional instructional school ways. Empathy is something that is caught rather than taught. You will see how the Roots of Empathy instructor coaches the students to observe the baby's intention and to ask them, do you think the baby is going to keep trying? Will the baby persevere? And this is a dialogue which is based on Socratic method, in that you only ask questions. You will hear the Roots of Empathy instructor ask many questions. Many of them have no answer. And certainly we would never insult the intelligence of the students by asking a question that we know the answer to. So the questions are deep questions that allow them to develop their empathy muscle. So have a look.
How are you today? Hello, baby May, and how she keeps trying. Does anybody remember when she was learning to roll over? What? She kept trying. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Did that get her? You okay? Baby, we'll see you soon. See you soon. See you soon. Goodbye, baby, we'll see you soon. See you very soon. Goodbye, baby, we'll see you soon. See you soon. See you soon.
Earth should not be destiny. The fact that a person might be born into circumstances, well, for whatever reason, the family is unable to provide the support that the baby and young child needs, is certainly not equitable. And what Roots of Empathy tries to do is to create circumstances of allowing every child to develop empathy, because we know that empathy is certainly what is going to fuel change in the world, to be able to identify with the other person. The children around the green blanket in the Roots of Empathy class were able to identify deeply with this little baby's her need to reach that toy. You could see somatic empathy in that, where one child was saying, "Oh," when little baby May fell down on her chin. So they were rooting together in solidarity for that vulnerable little baby, and to find the vulnerability and humanity in a baby allows those children to bond to one another in a shared concern for a vulnerable person. And that is something that is proven to increase moral understanding. And one of the things that is prominent with people who are involved with social innovation is that they have a different moral compass. They have a broader, deeper scope of being able to morally identify with the inequality and to be able to do something about it. So I'd like to speak also briefly about resilience. Resilience is something that entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, cultivate. Whether they come with it, you're not born with it, but resilience is something that is a result of what happens around you, who buoys you up, what are your early experiences, what are your current support systems. And I say this because it's a lonely position, being an innovator. A social innovator particularly, it's very lonely. And we need to find ways to be available to support one another. And with the erosion of trust in the world, whether it's about media, traditional media, or social media, there's been a massive erosion of trust. We hope that there will be some of you who will look at this area as something that you can do to build trust and confidence. Because not only were there Holocaust deniers, but there were also climate science deniers, and there were also pandemic deniers. Now there are vaccine deniers. So there needs to be an approach in the world where we can find a confidence that we can support the exchange of trusted information. I want to leave you on a very hopeful note. We asked some 8 and 9-year-old children in Roots of Empathy classes what they would wish for the world in 2021. And their ability to wish altruistically for the world is remarkable. There is no altruism, and I simply mean by altruism, giving without the idea of getting back. But there's no altruism without empathy.
Hello, my name is Vivian, and my hope for the world in 2021 is that people respect diversity.
My name is Cash, and my hope for the world in 2021 is that people respect others' differences.
My name is Emmanuel, and my hope for the world in 2021 is for COVID to go and to have joy and to be loved and grateful.
Hi, my name is Ellie, and my hope for the world in 2021 is everybody is loved and equal, and people are okay. 2021 is everybody is, and that COVID-19 is over.
Hi, my name is Dalton, and my hope for the world in 2021 is no more COVID, and people should have love and joy, and no more war.
They've got it just about right. And I think you people have it just about right, that you are meeting in this stressed time to talk about social innovation. And the fact that you are also a younger generation gives me incredible hope. And I send you my hope back right at you. And I also send you every good wish for your own personal ability to move ahead in the direction you want, but more importantly, to move ahead together. Thank you.